I was mocked as just a housewife at his company party, until I took revenge by revealing I secretly owned 51% of the entire firm. Hi, I'm Jennifer Chin. Growing up, my parents instilled in me the belief that true wealth comes from humility and smart work. While other kids dreamed of being doctors or lawyers, I was captivated by the stock market. By 12, I was devouring investment books and obsessively tracking market trends, much to my parents' bewilderment. "Sweetie, maybe you should spend more time with your friends," my mom would suggest, eyeing me over stacks of financial reports. "This is fun for me, Mom," I'd reply without looking up. "Did you know Warren Buffett bought his first stock at 11? She chuckled, shaking her head. "Just promise me you won't forget to live while you're planning your empire." That promise grew harder to keep as my hobby turned into a passion and eventually expertise. By 16, I was managing a modest portfolio with my savings and allowance. Winning a full scholarship to study finance at Harvard felt like destiny. At Harvard, I met Michael. He was studying business administration, charming and ambitious, and aiming to climb the corporate ladder. We met during finals week, both reaching for the same economics textbook. "Ladies first," he said with a warm smile. I laughed. "Thanks, I'm Jennifer." "Michael, maybe we could study together?" What began as a shared study session blossomed into daily coffee dates, then a relationship. Unlike others I'd met, Michael admired my ambition. "You're going to dominate the business world," he'd say, watching me dissect market trends. "Any company would be lucky to have you." What he didn't know was that I wasn't planning to work for anyone else. My scholarship covered everything, so I funneled my earnings into investments. By graduation, my portfolio had grown exponentially, but I kept it quiet. I wanted success on my terms, not as the girl with the trust fund. Michael landed a prestigious job at Sterling Industries, a major tech firm in Boston, while I chose to work independently. When I declined several high-profile offers, Michael was skeptical. "Are you sure?" he asked. "These are dream opportunities." "I have my own plans," I replied with a smile. "Trust me." 1 year later, we got married in a modest ceremony. Michael's mother, Patricia, was less than thrilled with my career choice. "Investment consulting?" She'd sneer. "Is that even a real job?" I smiled, recalling my parents' advice about staying humble. By then, my portfolio was worth over $50 million, strategically diversified and quietly making me one of Sterling's largest individual shareholders, though no one, not even Michael, knew. Michael thrived at Sterling, rising through the ranks to work under James Wilson, the arrogant VP of operations. Wilson was infamous for his outdated views, especially about women. "The problem with modern marriages," he'd say at company events, "is women forgetting their place." Michael would laugh awkwardly, avoiding confrontation. It irritated me, but I let it slide until the annual executive party. Sterling was unveiling restructuring plans, and as a key shareholder, I had a vested interest in attending. "Are you sure you want to come?" Michael asked. "These events can be dull for non-employees." "I think it's time I took a closer look at your work," I replied, carefully applying my makeup. I chose a classic black dress, pearl earrings, and my grandmother's vintage watch, a talisman in every major decision I'd made. The hotel ballroom buzzed with chatter as we arrived. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, and the scent of champagne lingered in the air. Michael led me to James Wilson, who was holding court near the bar. "Jennifer, Michael," James called, raising his glass. "We were just discussing Sterling's exciting new direction, cutting R&D for short-term profits. Doesn't innovation drive sustainable growth?" I asked, feigning innocence. James's smile faltered. "Ah, the little wife has opinions on business, does she?" Laughter rippled through the group. Michael shifted uncomfortably. "She likes to read the financial news," he said quickly. "Honey, maybe we should grab some drinks." But James wasn't done. "Sterling's biggest problem," he announced loudly, "is too many voices from people who don't understand real business, like housewives who think reading the Wall Street Journal makes them experts." The crowd chuckled, but I noticed the CEO, Thomas Richards, watching with interest. Before I could speak, a familiar voice interrupted. "Actually, James, you might want to rethink that." Sarah Martinez, my private banker and confidant, stepped forward, her smile sharp. "Should I explain, Jennifer, or would you like to?" James's smug expression faltered. "What's going on here?" I straightened, feeling my grandmother's watch against my wrist. The time had come. "Since you're so concerned about shareholder value, James," I said, my voice calm, Perhaps we should discuss the report I'm presenting at Monday's board meeting, the one outlining why your restructuring plan will fail. James turned crimson. Board meeting? What are you talking about? CEO Richards stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. Jennifer Chin, JC Holdings. I knew the name sounded familiar. I smiled. Strategic anonymity can be a powerful tool. What's going on? Michael whispered, his face pale and voice trembling. Sarah stepped forward, her tone cutting through the silence. Your wife, she announced to the room, owns 51% of Sterling Industries shares, and no, she doesn't spend her days shopping. The silence hung for a moment before chaos erupted. James Wilson's face turned a vivid red, cycling through shades I didn't know were possible. Michael looked as though he might faint. This is absurd, James sputtered. There must be some mistake. Sarah, ever composed, tapped on her tablet. I can show you the documentation if you'd like. I have all the records right here. CEO Richards stepped forward, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. That won't be necessary, Sarah. I suspected as much for some time. The board has been impressed with Mrs. Chin's insights and recommendations for years. James turned to him, stunned. You knew? Of course, Richards replied smoothly. Why do you think your restructuring plan hasn't been approved? Mrs. Chin raised significant objections. Michael finally found his voice, though it wavered. Jennifer, how? When? I met his wide-eyed gaze. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, I suggested, glancing at the growing crowd of onlookers. My office is just upstairs, Richards offered. Shall we? The elevator ride was oppressively silent. Michael alternated between glancing at me and staring at the floor, while James seethed. Sarah, steady as ever, stood by my side, a quiet but unwavering presence. Richards's office was expansive, with panoramic views of the Boston skyline. As we took our seats, James immediately claimed the chair nearest Richards' desk, as if proximity could restore his authority. Well, Richards began, leaning back in his chair, this has been an eventful evening. Eventful? James exploded. This is outrageous. She can't possibly— She can and does, Sarah interrupted, laying documents on the desk. Jennifer Chin, through carefully managed investment vehicles, controls 51% of Sterling Industries. She's been building her position over the past 5 years. Michael's expression morphed from confusion to hurt. 5 years? But we've been married for 3. I started investing in Sterling before we met, I explained evenly. The company had potential but needed modernization. I saw an opportunity. Modernization? James sneered. Yes, James, I replied calmly. Modernization, like fostering innovation instead of gutting R&D, like respecting your employees instead of perpetuating a toxic workplace. Richards leaned forward. Mrs. Chin's recommendations have been instrumental in shaping our strategy. Her analysis has consistently outperformed expectations. Michael's voice was barely audible. Why didn't you tell me? I held his gaze. Would it have made a difference? Would you have defended me against James's comments if he'd known I was Sterling's majority shareholder? He flinched, the answer clear without being spoken. This is preposterous, James barked, rising from his chair. I've dedicated 15 years to Sterling. You can't just turn it into a toxic environment where innovation and talent are stifled? I interrupted. James, your restructuring plan would destroy this company. The board won't be supporting it. Richards cut in. In fact, we need to discuss your future with Sterling. My future? James looked stricken. Yes, I said, standing to meet his glare. Your leadership is outdated, your strategies are short-sighted, and your conduct unacceptable. Sterling deserves better. You can't fire me, James shouted. You're just a majority shareholder, Sarah interjected coolly. And yes, she can. Michael remained frozen, his expression unreadable. You told me you were consulting, he murmured. You said it was small scale. I never lied, I said softly. I just didn't tell you everything. Would you have respected my decisions if I had? James erupted again, pointing at Michael. She's tearing us apart. Women like her. That's enough, Richards snapped, his tone sharp. James, you'll receive the details of your separation package tomorrow. Please leave. James stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Sarah excused herself, leaving me alone with Michael and Richards. Mrs. Chin, Richards began, will you be taking a more active role in the company? Yes, I replied firmly, starting with a comprehensive review of our culture and leadership. Michael finally spoke, his voice cracking. And what about us? I turned to him, my voice steady. That depends. Are you ready to see me as an equal, or am I still just the little wife you asked to stay quiet at company events? I need time, he stammered, standing abruptly. This is all too much. He left, and I watched his retreating figure. Richards cleared his throat. Family and business rarely mix well. True, I said, exhaling deeply. But principles shouldn't be compromised. The days that followed were a whirlwind. James's firing made headlines, Sterling Industries, a shakeup at the top. The stock price dipped briefly before recovering as my vision for the company became public. Michael stayed with his parents, processing everything. His mother left a string of hostile voicemails, which I deleted without hesitation. My focus remained on transforming Sterling, revitalizing R&D, implementing work-life balance policies, and fostering innovation. 1 week later, Michael returned. He looked worn, his usual polish replaced by exhaustion. "Can we talk?" he asked hesitantly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat, then immediately stood again, pacing nervously. "I've been thinking about everything," he began, "about us, about work." "And?" I prompted. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice low. "I let James and others disrespect you. I should have stood up for you. I was so focused on my career that I forgot what really matters." I watched him for a moment before replying. "Change doesn't come through words, Michael. It comes through actions. Are you ready to show me that you see me as your equal?" He nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. "Yes, I am." I waited silently, giving him space to continue. "But you weren't completely honest either," Michael added after a moment. "You kept such a huge part of your life hidden from me. How are we supposed to have a real marriage with secrets like that?" "You're right," I admitted, keeping my voice calm. "I should have trusted you with the truth. But Michael, ask yourself, why didn't I feel I could?" He sank into the chair, his hands running through his hair. "Because I showed you I couldn't be trusted. Every time I laughed at James's jokes, every time I told you to stay quiet, I proved I cared more about office politics than supporting my wife. The next few weeks tested everything, my marriage, my resolve, and my ability to steer Sterling Industries through massive change. James Wilson hadn't gone quietly. He hired a lawyer and threatened to sue for wrongful termination, and his allies within the company whispered behind my back. "She's tearing down our traditions," they muttered in the break room. "This is what happens when you let emotions run a business." Others sneered, but facts don't lie. Within 1 month, employee satisfaction soared by 40%, and R&D, finally free from James's stifling grip, filed 12 patent applications. The stock price climbed steadily, proving that my changes were more than just radical. They were necessary. At home, Michael hovered in a strange limbo, sleeping in the guest room and walking on eggshells around me. His mother, Patricia, however, had no such hesitation. She stormed into our house one afternoon, her designer heels clicking like gunfire. "We need to talk," she announced, barely pausing before stepping into the living room. "By all means," I said dryly, closing the door behind her. "This power trip of yours has gone far enough," she declared, folding her arms. "You've made your point. Now step back and let the men handle business." I raised an eyebrow. "The men? You've humiliated Michael enough already," she snapped. "His colleagues don't know how to treat him anymore. Do you have any idea what this is doing to his career?" "Humiliating?" I repeated. "Like being laughed at during business functions? Like being dismissed as just a housewife? That's different," she waved a manicured hand dismissively. "That's just how business works. Men need to—" "What, Patricia?" "Undermine women to prop up their egos, pretend competence doesn't exist if it comes from the wrong gender." "You tricked him," she burst out. "My son married you thinking you were a normal wife, and now—" Michael's voice cut through the tension, startling us both. "Mom," he said evenly, "you need to leave." "What?" Patricia turned to him, her expression softening with relief. "Thank goodness you're here. We need to talk sense into her before she destroys everything." But Michael wasn't looking at her. His eyes were locked on me, filled with something I hadn't seen in weeks, understanding. "Now," he said firmly. After she left, silence settled between us. Michael sank onto the couch, exhaustion etched into his face. "I heard everything," he said quietly, "and I finally realized I've been just like her, treating you like you need to be managed, not supported, and I'm sorry." I sat down beside him, keeping a cautious distance. "I didn't want to outshine you, Michael. I just wanted your respect, as your wife, as a partner, as a person. You have it, he said softly. I know I don't deserve your trust right now, but I want to earn it, not because of your money or your power, but because I love you and I want to be the partner you deserve. My phone buzzed, breaking the moment. It was Sarah. Jennifer, she said when I answered, James has withdrawn his lawsuit. Word about Sterling's latest quarterly projections has spread, and they're impressive. Send me the details, I said with a smile. And Sarah, thank you for everything. When I hung up, Michael asked, Good news? James is backing down, I confirmed. It seems success really is the best revenge. Michael nodded thoughtfully. What happens now with Sterling and with us? Sterling will keep evolving, I replied. We're rolling out a new parental leave policy and launching a mentorship program for women in tech next month. And us? I took a deep breath. That depends. Are you ready for a marriage of equals? Really ready? I'd like to try, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Starting with moving out of the guest room, if you're okay with that. It's killing my back. I laughed, surprising myself. We'll need couples counseling, and you'll have to stand up to your mother. Done, he said, grinning. Though maybe we should have dinner with her next week. I'd love to see your face when you explain your women's leadership initiative. For the first time in weeks, I felt real hope for our future. A year after the dramatic upheaval at Sterling Industries, the company bore little resemblance to its former self. Under Jennifer's leadership, Sterling had pivoted from a stagnant tech giant to a beacon of innovation. The board, initially skeptical of her aggressive reforms, now celebrated her foresight. The R&D department, once suffocated by James Wilson's short-sighted cuts, buzzed with energy. In a bold move, Jennifer had greenlit a project to develop an AI platform for optimizing urban energy grids, a venture that promised to redefine Sterling's role in the global tech landscape. When the platform's prototype secured a $500 million contract with a consortium of European cities, the stock price soared to an all-time high. Financial analysts, once dismissive, now dubbed Sterling the comeback story of the decade. A Forbes cover story featured Jennifer, her poised smile framed against Boston's skyline, with the headline, The Quiet Investor Who Reshaped an Industry. Yet, for Jennifer, success was never about headlines. It was about impact. She walked through Sterling's redesigned headquarters, where glass walls and open spaces replaced the old cubicle maze. Employees greeted her with nods of respect, some with shy smiles. Lila, a young engineer who had tearfully thanked Jennifer for the women's mentorship program, now led a team developing neural network algorithms. You gave me a chance to dream bigger, Lila said during a recent company town hall, her voice steady but emotional. Moments like these grounded Jennifer, reminding her of her parents' mantra, true wealth lies in humility and service. She had introduced a parental leave policy that rivaled Silicon Valley's best, a scholarship fund for employees' children, and mandatory diversity training that even the most stubborn executives attended. Employee satisfaction, once a dismal 20%, now hovered at 65%, and patent filings had tripled. Sterling wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. At home, Jennifer and Michael were navigating their own transformation. Couples counseling had become a weekly ritual, a space where they peeled back layers of resentment and misunderstanding. In one session, Michael admitted, I was intimidated by your success, Jen. I thought supporting you meant staying out of your way. Jennifer nodded, her throat tight. I needed you to stand with me, not behind me. Slowly, they rebuilt trust. Michael moved out of the guest room, and their evenings began to feel like the early days of their courtship. Shared laughter over takeout, quiet moments watching the Charles River from their balcony. One night, Michael surprised her with a candlelit dinner, the table set with her favorite Vietnamese pho, painstakingly prepared from a recipe he'd begged her mother for. To the woman who's teaching me what partnership means, he toasted, his eyes soft. Jennifer clinked her glass against his, her heart lighter than it had been in months. But challenges lingered. Patricia, Michael's mother, remained a thorn. After her confrontation with Jennifer, she had retreated into icy silence, refusing invitations to dinner. Michael, determined to prove his growth, confronted her. Mom, if you can't respect my wife, you're pushing me away too, he said firmly during a tense lunch. Patricia's lips pursed, but she nodded curtly. A week later, she sent Jennifer a stiffly worded email, offering to host a family dinner. It's a start, Michael said, squeezing Jennifer's hand. They agreed to attend, though Jennifer braced herself for Patricia's inevitable barbs. Counseling had taught her to set boundaries, and she was ready to enforce them. Jennifer's personal reflections often came late at night, when the city was quiet. Sitting at her desk, her grandmother's watch ticking softly on her wrist, she thought about her journey. She had once equated wealth with portfolio numbers, but now she saw it differently. Wealth was Lila's confidence, Sterling's renewed purpose, Michael's tentative steps toward equality. It was the courage to stay humble while wielding power, to build without destroying. She thought of her mother's advice, "Don't forget to live, Jenny," and realized she was finally balancing ambition with joy. A photo on her desk, taken during a rare weekend getaway with Michael, showed them laughing on a Cape Cod beach, the wind tousling their hair. It was a reminder that her empire was only as strong as the relationships she nurtured. Looking ahead, Jennifer envisioned Sterling as a global leader in ethical tech. She was negotiating partnerships in Asia and Africa, aiming to bring sustainable solutions to underserved regions. At home, she and Michael were discussing starting a family, a prospect that both thrilled and terrified her. "We'll figure it out together," Michael promised, and for the first time she believed him. As she prepared for a board meeting to unveil a new initiative, a fellowship for women in STEM, she felt a surge of purpose. Sterling's future, like her own, was boundless, built on the principles her parents had instilled: work smart, stay humble, and never stop growing. One evening, as Jennifer and Michael walked through Boston Common, the city lights reflecting on the pond, he stopped and turned to her. "I'm proud of you, Jen," he said, his voice steady, "not just for Sterling, but for who you are." She smiled, her fingers brushing her grandmother's watch. "I'm proud of us," she replied. In that moment, under the stars, Jennifer knew she had found her true wealth, a life of impact, love, and unwavering resolve.